LAAL SINGH CHADDHA. You know what? Overall, I gotta say, I enjoyed this more than Forrest Gump. I've seen Forrest Gump plenty of times. It's a classic. It's in the National Film Archives. It's an important movie because it does a really good job of weaving a fictional character into historical events, and these are events that tied American culture together. Um, what was nice about this is it was like watching Forrest Gump without that pesky Tom Hanks or that annoying Sally Field. You know, it was great. There were some shot for shot things where it was I was like, yeah, they nailed it. Some of the lighting even sort of feels like Forrest Gump. Um, I think every 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 country should have some character like Forrest Gump, some movie that does this because these were events that happened in Indian culture as opposed to American. So it's done the same way. I don't think going forward that we need to retell Forrest Gump with the leg braces and the challenges that he had. I think you could do something like this, show a person's life through the history of the country, and really the message being we all are that character. We all have touched culture a little bit, and there's an everyman quality to these movies where we can always relate to time passing, to things happening in our lives, and what we how we deal with those things. You were there. What did you think?
Yeah, I liked it. uh no, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, we kind of already talked about this, but I think it was just so much more meaningful this version. There was it had everything had purpose. Everything that happened they had like in the original one, all that stuff that happened just felt like it was for comedy's sake. This one, it all felt hermetic. I don't know if that's quite the right word. It just felt like everything that Lal did, it had purpose, meaning, and it all tied into later events, and it showed the reason for him being a good person, why things would work out for him later on throughout the movie.
Sure.
Because he was kind of paying his dues. Not that he had to, but it's just he was showing kindness to people who had, never experienced it. And he was showing that despite all the horrible things he experienced in his life, that he still remained a good, positive person. And because of
Yeah.
that, he was an infectious character for people who you would think would be lost causes. And he changed their lives, he made their lives better.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that in Forrest Gump there were like the original one, there were elements of that and everything, but it just felt so much more meaningful in this one. And I loved the culture of it. Watching the original one, it's kind of hard because it feels so trashy because it's like, they're all Southerners. Like no offense to Southerners, but like it's just it's just
Oh,
hard to like
I'm looking
what
forward to those comments next week.
Okay,
That's
I'm
funny.
sorry. I'm sorry. But like, okay, Southerners are fine. It felt there were just things about it. You know what, whatever. My
I just
shirt's
look at
getting
Andrew cringing. I'm sorry.
I'm not cringing.
I
This
don't
is what we
care.
in the business call smirking.
But no, there was just things about it that it was just like the culture around that just felt trashy, whereas this one felt classy.
Well, I mean, I understand the point you're making. What I'm thinking is that like what was nice about this is like we have him, you know, still wearing those running shoes, and there's that thing where like he does the running across the country, and that's
Oh, that one. Okay, sorry.
but
Really quickly.
okay.
No, 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 no. The running thing in this one was so much more, had so much more meaning behind it. Again, going back to like the original one
And they had a
was
song
like,
in there, which is great.
yeah, it was a beautiful song. And
Uh,
and
the music was wonderful.
yes, in the original one, it's like he's running and it's just funny. And in this one, it's like he's going through like the meaning of life on this run. Anyway, go
Yeah.
ahead with what you were gonna say.
Well,
Sorry, Southerners. Sorry,
we
Southerners.
yeah, let's
It's too late.
highlight that one. So it's interesting because rather than just having him on a park bench, um, or having him go onto the school bus, we see parallel scenes, but he tells the story on a train, on a working class train, and he's by this point he's worth millions, but he's sort of this man of the people guy he just tells his story because he's friendly and people listen. And what's nice about it is that, like, as they start recognizing all of the great things and that he's been a part of, they have their reactions, these incredulous, like, oh my God, you were part of that. And even though I wasn't privy to a lot of these things because I grew up in America, I could buy their reaction because I had the same feeling, and like I could see like his influence on the analog to the Elvis character. It was cleverly done. And what I'll also say is that it had that feeling of a 90s movie, of a good, just a feel-good movie. The music, the production, and just the overall message was very, honestly, classic Hollywood in a way that Hollywood hasn't been in a very long time. Did you get a chance to see it, Dan?
Okay, so completely honest, I haven't had the chance to go see it, and I do regret not having that. I just ran out of time doing everything for prepping for the show and whatnot. Like, I barely just fit in For All Mankind. I wanted to watch For All Mankind, I wanted to watch Prey, and I wanted to watch LAAL SINGH CHADDHA. But it's also, here's the other thing. This is I want to just quickly touch upon this. By the way, everything you guys have said about this movie, I agree. Everything I've seen about this so far, I've watched behind the scenes stuff of like how they made some of the songs and the other stuff. I saw some of the press junket stuff they've done. It's a whole it's a wholesome movie. It's made for a family audience, and I think that's part of it where Forrest Gump at times maybe wasn't so family friendly of a film. There's specific scenes, for example, that are not super family friendly. This movie, on the other hand, from everything I understand about it, is more wholly aimed at a family audience, and that ties into when it's coming out. So Miss Marvel is something that we have been watching for earlier in the summer. And one of the big focuses of the show was, the history of the family that Kamala Khan comes from. And, her family migrated from what is now modern day India to modern day Pakistan. So from India to Pakistan, like, they call it the partition, 1947. The two countries, separated, became the two countries that they are when the British left. So August 14th and August 15th are the independence days of the two countries. So today's the 14th, so I'm from Pakistan, so it's Independence Day in Pakistan today. It's like the 4th of July, if you will. And then tomorrow on the 15th, it's Independence Day of India. The reason why was because the British magistrate wanted to be at both ceremonies and he couldn't be there on the same day. Back then they didn't have private jets. So point being, this movie comes out on a long weekend in India, so it's a big Bollywood release. Aamir Khan and Kareena are two of the biggest stars in the that part of the world, as well as when you go internationally, they are big representatives of what Bollywood is. So this movie, along with, there's another one called Raksha Bandhan, which has got Akshay Kumar in it, who is another big time actor who's been around for like 3 decades as well, just like Aamir Khan has been. These two movies are dueling it out at the box office, and I just wanted to kind of touch upon like the dynamic of like they released this specifically now because there is a lot of like a lot of what Forrest or Lal does in this movie is like these acts of what you would call maybe patriotism or things of that nature, right? Like there's a nationalistic fervor to like parts of the movie, which ties into when it's coming out and how it ties into the history and the culture of the country, which is I think it explores it in an earnest manner. Yeah.
It is earnest. It is feel good, and that's really what I'm saying about the idea that every country should have something like this. It's nationalism. It's healthy nationalism that draws people together.
I think nationalism may be the wrong word. Maybe you want to call it patriotism.
It's not. You know what? Yeah. It's not flag waving patriotism. It's observing, and it's not nationalism even in a charged sense. It's just nationalism in the objective sense of the word, which is I am part of a nation just by the fact that I was born my family was, part of these stories. This history affected my life. And it's what a character like this does is it says all of us who are watching this have experienced this. And it's not about, some people have, this is what draws people together to say, we are Indians, and even in Forrest Gump, there was a lot in there that, the Vietnam War, whichever side of it you were on, he was just a guy, and maybe that's sort of the genius of having a dumb character, who's like, he doesn't feel one way or another about it. He's just living through it. And a lot of us don't get the chance to be like, well, I don't know what I think about that. You're just living through it because stuff is happening. And, I think it makes it walks the line of, being apolitical to a certain degree while still acknowledging these things happened. It pays tribute to history without commenting on it too pointedly.
Yeah, and that's in that manner. I think it is similar to Forrest Gump too, right? It's oh, I muted myself again, didn't I?
No, you're good.
But I was just saying, in that manner, it's similar to Forrest Gump because what you're seeing in this movie is like, we keep saying we live in unprecedented times. I feel like, but like when you go back and read the history books from like when we were older and like we go back and read about what was going on in 2022, it won't feel the same as somebody reading the history book who didn't live through it. Because we were like,
Yeah.
we were just there. Like I remember, like you could tell a story about what you were doing when some kind of big event was happening, where like the pandemic was going on and I was sitting at home and they're like, what was that like? Well, it's sort of it's in that way. I think just the concept of Forrest Gump and what that movie was, I think taking that concept and trying to then, like you said, apply it to different cultures and parts of the world, it's a fantastic way to learn
Now,
about the history and culture and values of that country.
yeah. What I will say is that there's some stuff that's like word for word. There's some stuff that's, shot for shot. And again, I think we don't need to remake Forrest Gump as Forrest Gump with the exact same story, and the exact same limitations. Like, I think it would be refreshing to just say, hey, this is our Forrest Gump. But give him, we don't need to, how many times can I really see the, breaking free from the braces? It's, that's one of the gripes that I have. I also think the relationship between the Jenny character and LAAL, her name is Rupa in this. I don't like that relationship. It's not a good
Well,
relationship.
it's similar to like the Jenny character, right? It's like an
No,
abusive.
and that's
No?
yeah, it's definitely abusive. That's the
Yeah.
thing. It's like there's
Although she was nicer in this one.
she was
She
nicer, but like
yeah.
we should if we're gonna make improvements on this story, let's make sure that she's a bit more reasonable and likable and not
I mean, they might have.
But
opportunistic.
that's the point too, is like all of these people in his life that
I know, but
despite the way he's treated, he's still a good person. And he can make people
he's a
better
great person.
as well.
She's the one I have a problem with.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of, but okay, so this is a direct, like, they credit Eric Roth, who wrote the original screenplay for Forrest Gump. So this is a direct like this is, they call it an official remake because Paramount Pictures is involved and Viacom 18, the Indian division of Paramount Pictures, produced the movie. So I feel like maybe they thought some of these elements were almost like crucial to the core of what this story was. And if it was more of an adaptation than a remake,
Yes.
then they would have probably felt a little more open to changing some of those things.
So here's what I'm going off of here, because there was some stuff that was shot for shot, but there were other things that they made significant changes to. There's no shrimp boat in this, There's no shrimping industry in this, it's more tied into a realistic thing that fits into the culture. I won't spoil it here for you.
Yeah, but he still goes through that process.
He goes through, and that's what I'm saying, is like we can see this progression and we can tell these stories without all of the details being exactly the same. And so they pushed the envelope there, which I think was a good move. And I think if we see more countries coming out with their own Forrest Gump types of movies. They shouldn't be afraid to change some more of those minor details.
But don't you
Yeah.
think that people like that relationship?
Maybe. Maybe. I mean, I will say, like, there were some times where I was watching it and I was playing the Forrest Gump scene in my head, and watching them in
Same.
parallel.
Hmm.
So,
But
you
that's the
know,
thing is like everybody's favorite line from that movie is, you'll always be my Jenny or whatever he says, right?
that's not my favorite line.
That's like that's
I like
everybody's
that.
most
My favorite
quoted
line is,
line.
I just kept running.
I okay. All of that said, I do want to ask this because Catriona, I don't know how many. I guess let's go around the table. So, Andrew, this is, I believe, your third Bollywood experience because you've seen a couple other Bollywood movies for the show, and those were, by comparison to this, very different movies, although in both cases they were more or less remakes, not official remakes, but remakes. This is more of a, like a remake that, like, they're advertising as a remake. It is more of, it sticks more closer to the original story structure, but obviously, like you said, they have had to make some changes. They've updated it. They've sort of modernized it because, like Katrina, you mentioned, Forrest Gump, you can't just make a shot-for-shot remake and expect it to resonate, even if it was in Hollywood, with the current audience that would go and watch a movie like that, and especially in India, where, like, the audience would not connect to a lot of the same things. But the question I wanted to ask Andrew, like, how are you looking at, like, the idea of remaking something and then using it as not only an opportunity to just tell that story again in maybe a slightly different context, but also maybe improving upon the original? Like, do you think LAAL Singh Chadha did that versus Forrest Gump, or no?
I don't think it'd be right to say that it improved it. Um, it was an adaptation, and they made it their own. And listen, I know Forrest Gump is a great film. It's one of the great films of all time, and it is. Like, you're not going to beat Forrest Gump at its own game, especially if you're saying we're remaking it. I think what you do with that, and you say that's a great idea, that did something for America, that did something for actors and for writers, and, like, it showed what could be done with film. This didn't really innovate, and it didn't really improve Forrest Gump. It's telling the same story. I think what they did is they successfully adapted it and made it relevant to their culture, which is a triumph, I would say.
I actually think in ways they improved
Really?
on it. Like what I said earlier, giving purpose to all of those moments. That in the original one just felt more like it was for comedic effect, which I think works for that version. And there were some funny things in this one as well, but I think it was just more of a meaningful version of it. And like I said about it, the karma of it, everything that he does having a purpose, and that it all ties back in together. And I know the original one did that too, but it felt so much more meaningful in this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Well,
it was a beautiful movie. What I will say in terms of just the Bollywood comparison, there were no, like, dance numbers. That wasn't like breaking into song. But what I will say is, like, if you are kind of in the mood for something that's feel good, that's familiar, but isn't necessarily something that you've seen before, this was so refreshing. And Bollywood movies tend to be really refreshing for me, because there's no American politics in it. There's none of our culture. Like, you can really kind of escape to movie land again and just be entertained. So maybe this is where we go out on this. Go see it. Give it a shot if you're not into Bollywood, if you've never seen Bollywood movies. Like, they really did a good job here. And then tell us what you think. Follow us, be our friend, comment, disagree with us, agree with us, tell me my shirt's the wrong color, and we will always enjoy having more people join our
and
movie fan
before we
community.
finish though, I do want to pose another question. So this is, we made, not only reviewed the movie, but we took a shot at comparing, this Bollywood remake to the original Hollywood film. It's not always the case that Bollywood's remaking a Hollywood movie. There are some examples where the things have gone the other direction, but now we have done like three of these where we watched the Bollywood movie, we watched the Hollywood movie, and compared them. And I think we have fun doing it. But if you guys enjoy watching us do that and you'd like us to do more of that, then let us know, because we would love to, touch upon more of like it, because I think there's tremendous value in, seeing how two very different cultures approach, let's say, the same story on screen. Like it's fantastic exploration of cultures, ideals, and values, and philosophies of filmmaking. Let's call it
Let us
that.
know.
Yeah.
Let us know. We want to hear from you people.